The restaurant glowed with a golden warmth that didn't reach Lena's trembling hands. Crystal chandeliers reflected off silverware as laughter rippled from the tables of polished men and women dressed in elegance she couldn't afford to imagine. She moved swiftly between them, balancing a tray of champagne flutes, praying not to make a mistake. Her name tag, Lena, caught the faint light each time she bent to serve. To the guests, she was invisible, another face in uniform. To her, this job was survival. She checked the clock above the bar. Only 2 more hours until her shift ended. 2 more hours until she could slip into the cold night, ride the last bus home, and count her tips beside her mother's medicine bottles. Then it happened. At table 9, the one reserved for VIPs, a man turned just as she approached, and her tray wobbled. A splash of deep red wine cascaded across the crisp white tablecloth, landing inches from the cuff of his dark, expensive suit. The room went silent for a breath. Lena froze, her throat tightening, cheeks burning. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, grabbing napkins. I wasn't looking." The man lifted his gaze to hers. His eyes were an impossible shade of steel gray, cool yet searching. He wasn't angry. If anything, he looked amused. Ethan Cross. She recognized him instantly. The millionaire investor who'd been on every magazine cover that month. Ruthless in business, untouchable in charm. The kind of man who belonged to this glittering world that would never even notice a girl like her. "Relax," he said softly, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "It's just wine, not blood." His smirk was infuriatingly calm, but something in his tone made her heart skip. She nodded quickly, mumbled another apology, and turned to leave when the air around the table shifted. "Ethan," a woman's voice purred from behind him. Lena froze mid-step. The woman approaching was breathtaking, diamonds dripping from her ears, a red dress hugging her every movement. The look in Ethan's eyes hardened. "Clara," he said flatly. "Oh, don't sound so surprised," she replied, looping her arm around a tall man beside her. "I just thought I'd introduce you to my fiancé." Lena caught the flicker of tension between them, the kind that came from history. Ethan's jaw tightened, his fingers tapping the table in silence. And then, without warning, he turned his attention back to Lena. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena, sir," she whispered. He studied her, really studied her, as if an idea had just sparked behind those gray eyes. "Lena," he said, leaning closer, "I need you to help me with something." Her pulse jumped. "Help you? Pretend to be my girlfriend," he said casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Just for 10 minutes. She blinked, unsure if she'd heard right. "Excuse me." He nodded toward Clara and her smug fiancé. "They think I can't move on. I'd like to prove them wrong. All you have to do is act like you're madly in love with me. You'll be compensated, of course." Lena's breath caught. "You want me to pretend to kiss you?" "Exactly," he said, lips curling slightly. 10 minutes, no strings. She glanced around the restaurant, at the cameras, the staff, her manager glaring from across the room. Her mind screamed no, but then the number he whispered, $1,000, hit her like a thunderclap. That money could pay for her mother's next treatment, cover rent, maybe even groceries. Her fingers twisted around her apron. "This is crazy," she muttered. "Maybe," Ethan said, his voice softening. "But you look like someone who could use a miracle." Something in his eyes, something lonely, despite the confidence, made her stop resisting. Her chest rose and fell with one shaky breath. 10 minutes, she whispered. He smiled, slow and dangerous. "That's all I'll need." And as the room watched in quiet curiosity, Ethan Cross stood, reached for the shy waitress's hand, and pulled her into a world where pretend kisses had the power to change everything. Lena's heart thudded so loudly she thought the whole restaurant could hear it. Ethan's fingers were warm around hers as he led her toward the center of the room. Every head turned. Conversations dimmed into whispers. Somewhere behind her, she heard a glass clink nervously, the sound of someone realizing something scandalous was about to unfold. "Relax," Ethan murmured, his breath brushing her ear. "Just follow my lead. Relax." How could she? Her mind was screaming. She was a waitress, not an actress, and certainly not someone who belonged at the side of a man like Ethan Cross. Yet there she was, standing beside him under the golden chandeliers, her trembling hands tucked against his chest as cameras and curious stares circled them. Clara, Ethan's ex-fiancée, had frozen mid-sentence. Her painted smile faltered. The man beside her shifted awkwardly, sensing the sudden tension in the air. Ethan caught her reaction with a smirk. It wasn't cruel, exactly, more like satisfaction tinged with something unspoken. "Smile," he whispered. "You're supposed to be in love with me, remember?" Lena blinked up at him, her lips parting in nervous confusion. His hand moved to the small of her back, guiding her closer. Her pulse raced so fast it made her dizzy. The scent of his cologne, subtle, expensive, surrounded her like a fog she couldn't escape. He tilted his head, voice low. "Now, look at me like I'm the only man in the world." She swallowed hard. Her eyes met his, and the rest of the room faded. The murmur of voices, the flicker of crystal, even the humiliation she'd feared, all of it melted away beneath that steady, unreadable gaze. She didn't have to act. Something inside her shifted, and her body obeyed. Her lips curved, not from rehearsal, but from something that felt dangerously real. "Good," he murmured, his thumb brushing her cheek. "Now hold still." Before she could react, he leaned closer. Their faces were inches apart. She could feel the heat of his breath against her skin, and her stomach flipped. This was supposed to be pretend, a performance. But in that moment, it didn't feel like acting. It felt like falling. The restaurant was dead silent. Ethan's hand slid to her jaw, tilting her face upward. His touch was gentle, deliberate. When his lips finally met hers, the world stopped. It wasn't a fiery, reckless kiss. It was slow, curious, testing, as though he was trying to understand something he'd never felt before. Lena froze for half a heartbeat, then instinctively responded. Her hands, still trembling, rested lightly on his chest. She felt the steady beat of his heart beneath her palms, and that simple rhythm made her knees weak. For 10 minutes, they existed in their own quiet universe, two strangers bound by a lie that somehow felt more honest than anything they'd ever said. Ethan forgot about Clara, about appearances, about the image he'd spent years building. All he could think of was the warmth of Lena's lips and the way her breath caught between each heartbeat. When he finally pulled away, both of them were breathing unevenly. A wave of applause erupted, hesitant at first, then building. The other guests laughed and cheered, mistaking it for some bold romantic display. Clara's expression was unreadable, part fury, part disbelief. She turned sharply on her heel and left, her fiancé following behind, bewildered. Ethan kept his arm around Lena's waist, guiding her back toward her section of the restaurant. She tried to step away, but he didn't let go immediately. His gaze softened, voice quiet enough for only her to hear. "That was convincing," he said. Her throat felt dry. "You didn't tell me there'd be an audience." He smiled faintly. "You didn't tell me you'd be that good at pretending." Lena looked down, her cheeks burning. "I wasn't pretending," she almost said, but the words caught in her throat. She stepped back finally, eyes wide with confusion, heart still racing. Ethan watched her go, his expression unreadable, but inside him something cracked open, something dangerous. And as she disappeared into the kitchen swinging doors, clutching her apron like a shield, he realized that the 10 minutes he'd asked for had turned into something much harder to walk away from. The next morning, Lena woke to the shrill buzz of her cheap phone vibrating on the nightstand. She groaned, rubbing her tired eyes before answering. "Hello, Lena, it's about the restaurant," her manager's sharp voice snapped through the line. "Don't bother coming in today. You're done here." Her heart stopped. "What? Why?" "You know why," he hissed. "Your little performance last night, it's all over social media. The owner's furious. We don't need that kind of attention." Before she could defend herself, the call ended. Silence filled her small, dim apartment. The same silence she'd lived with for years, but today it felt cruel. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the cracks in the paint, fighting the lump in her throat. She opened her phone and saw it, dozens of notifications. Photos of her and Ethan, mid-kiss, plastered across celebrity blogs with captions like, "Who was the mystery waitress who stole millionaire Ethan Cross's heart? From rags to riches, the viral kiss that broke the internet." Her hands shook. She didn't look glamorous like the people in those photos, just stunned and out of place. The internet's judgment came fast. Gold digger. Opportunist. Actress. A soft cough came from the next room. Lena, her mother called weakly. Is everything okay? Lena forced a smile she didn't feel. Yeah, Mom, everything's fine. But it wasn't. She'd lost her job, her reputation was a joke, and the man who'd started it all probably didn't even remember her name. Except he did. That afternoon, a black car pulled up outside her apartment building. Ethan stepped out, wearing dark sunglasses and a look that turned every head on the street. When she opened the door, her breath caught. He looked out of place in her narrow, peeling hallway. Lena, he said quietly, removing his glasses. We need to talk. She folded her arms, wary. About what? You've done enough, don't you think? I didn't mean for you to get fired, he said, his tone surprisingly sincere. I should have handled the press before it spread. You think, she said bitterly. I'm the one everyone's calling a liar online. They think I did this for attention. I've lost everything because of your little act. He looked down for a moment, then met her gaze again. Then let me fix it. I'll pay for the damage. Whatever you need. I don't want your money, she interrupted, her voice trembling. I want my life back. For the first time, Ethan looked uncertain. He wasn't used to people refusing him. Then at least let me make it right. Dinner. Just to talk. She hesitated, ready to slam the door, but something in his voice stopped her. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the memory of that strange, electric connection they'd shared. Fine, she said finally. One dinner. That's all. That evening, they met at a quiet bistro far from the city's gossiping eyes. Lena wore a simple dress she hadn't touched in years, and Ethan, for once, didn't look like the confident man in the magazines. Over candlelight, the masks they both wore began to slip. Ethan told her about his childhood, how money came easily but love never did. How people saw him as a wallet, not a person. Clara didn't love me, he said. She loved what I could buy her. That's why what happened last night, it felt different. Lena stared at him, her heart pounding. Different how? He smiled faintly. Because for the first time, I wasn't pretending. Her breath caught. The room suddenly felt too small. Ethan, you shouldn't say things like that. I mean it, he said softly. You made me feel something I didn't think I could anymore. Before she could respond, a familiar voice sliced through the air like a knife. Well, isn't this cozy? Lena turned, and there stood Clara, immaculate as ever, her expression cold and triumphant. So this is the little waitress. She sneered. Enjoying your 15 minutes of fame. Lena stood up, her pulse hammering, but Ethan rose too, moving protectively beside her. Clara, leave, he said quietly. Oh, I'm not going anywhere, Clara snapped. You've embarrassed me publicly, Ethan. And her. She's about to learn what happens when you humiliate someone like me. She pulled out her phone, flashing the screen. I have every journalist in the city waiting for a quote. One word from me, and this girl's life is over. Lena's stomach dropped. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then you'll have to go through me, he said coldly. Clara's smirk faltered for just a moment before she turned on her heel and stormed away. Lena stood frozen, her breath shallow. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. Yes, I did, Ethan said, his eyes softening. Because I won't let anyone hurt you. For the first time, she believed him, and that terrified her more than anything. The ballroom shimmered with light, laughter, and champagne. Golden chandeliers glowed above an ocean of polished guests dressed in black and silver, their jewels flashing under the cameras. It was Ethan's annual charity gala, the same event where everything had started weeks ago. But this time, Lena wasn't there as a waitress. She was standing outside the grand entrance, clutching her small purse, her stomach knotted with fear. She shouldn't have come. Every instinct told her to turn back, to disappear and never look at Ethan cross again. But the message he'd sent earlier still echoed in her mind. Greater than, please, come tonight. I need to set things right. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. The scent of roses and expensive perfume wrapped around her as the crowd parted slightly, curious eyes following her every move. Whispers rippled across the room. That's her. The waitress. The kiss. She could feel every stare like a blade against her skin. Ethan stood near the stage, surrounded by business magnates and reporters. He looked impeccable in a dark suit, but there was tension in his shoulders, a quiet storm brewing behind his composed expression. When he saw her, relief flickered across his face. Before she could reach him, a sharp, mocking voice cut through the music. Well, the celebrity waitress finally shows her face. Clara, dressed in a glittering silver gown, she looked every bit the queen of the night, cold, flawless, and venomous. The crowd turned toward her as she stepped closer, phone in hand, eyes glinting with satisfaction. Did you really think you could fool everyone, sweetheart? Clara sneered. You think we don't know this was all a setup? The poor little waitress seducing the millionaire, classic fairy tale scam. Lena froze, her throat tightening. Cameras turned. A dozen microphones pointed toward her. I didn't. She began, but her voice cracked. Clara smiled cruelly. Go ahead, tell them you didn't plan this. Tell them you didn't leak those pictures yourself. Oh wait. She held up her phone. I've got proof you were paid for that stunt. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lena's knees weakened. Her vision blurred for a moment. She had no idea what proof Clara had fabricated, but she could already see the judgment in people's eyes. The humiliation burned through her chest. Ethan stepped forward, his voice slicing through the noise. That's enough. Clara laughed. Oh, please. You think defending her will save your reputation? She's ruined you, Ethan. She used you. Ethan turned to the crowd, his jaw set, his gray eyes fierce. He reached for the microphone on stage, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. You all deserve to know the truth, he began. Clara's right about one thing. I did ask this woman to pretend. I asked her to fake affection for me because I was too proud, too shallow to face my ex without a prop. The room went completely silent. Cameras zoomed in. But what happened next wasn't pretend, he continued, his voice softening. Lena didn't take a dime from me. She didn't want fame, or money, or attention. She lost her job because of me. And even then, she refused anything I offered to make it right. She's the only person in this room who's been honest with me, the only one who made me realize that money can't buy the things that matter. Clara scoffed. Are you really going to throw your career away for her? Ethan turned toward Lena, his gaze locking onto hers. For her, he said quietly, I'd throw away everything. He crossed the room in long strides, stopping inches from her. The world around them dissolved into a haze of lights and murmurs. His voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. You told me you weren't pretending that night. Neither was I. And before she could answer, he pulled her gently into his arms and kissed her. Not for 10 minutes this time, not for show, but with a slow, unguarded tenderness that silenced the entire ballroom. The applause began hesitantly, then grew louder, rolling through the hall like thunder. Cameras flashed, but neither of them cared. For the first time, Ethan Cross wasn't the millionaire everyone admired. He was just a man, and she, the shy waitress who'd stumbled into his world, was the only thing real in it. When they finally broke apart, Lena's eyes shimmered with tears. You just ruined your reputation, she whispered. He smiled. No, he said, brushing a tear from her cheek. I finally found something worth it. And as the music swelled, the crowd cheered, and the world watched in disbelief, Lena realized that the kiss that had once begun as a lie had turned into the truest moment of her life.